Good evening, afternoon or morning. Movie Cat is at the microphone, and today I will tell about a film about the Vietnam War. During the filming of which the US government refused to help the director in any way due to the scenario did not coincide with the official point of view on this war. American war drama Apocalypse Now.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
1969, the height of the Vietnam War. Captain Willard is listed as part of the Airborne Brigade, but really is used by the command to perform special tasks. Depressed by internal problems and no longer adapted to peaceful life, he lives in a hotel in Saigon, waiting for his next mission. He drinks a lot, reminisces too much, and crushes his room every morning, saying he feels weak when the Vietnamese in the jungle get stronger. A few months ago, he took advantage of a vacation and flew to the US to see his family. There he realized, after the things he experienced in Vietnam, he would never be able to live his former life. A few days later he returned back to Vietnam. One day, two military men come to him and inform him that they are instructed to deliver him to headquarters. Willard suffers from a hangover and does not want to go anywhere. The military men lead him first to a shower and then to the headquarters. There he is met by two high-ranking curators and a CIA officer. The curators tell Willard about the mission: to find in the jungles of Cambodia the former colonel of the American Army Walter Kurtz, who previously was one of the Green Berets in the Special Forces group, and before that in officer positions with the American contingents in West Berlin and South Korea. They inform that Colonel Kurtz, one of the best officers in the history of the American Army, without the consent of the higher headquarters, ordered his people to kill several reconnaissance double agents. Kurtz then defected, went insane, and now commands a group of locals in the jungles of neutral Cambodia, who respect him as a god. In conclusion, the curators say that Willard, having found Kurtz, should remove him from command, intentionally avoiding the word to kill. The curators also emphasize this mission never officially took place. Their story about Kurtz is full of riddles and omissions. For example, they are silent about the fact that Willard's predecessor, another liquidator sent with the same task earlier, stayed with Kurtz and became a faithful follower of him, writing a letter to his wife that he would never return. Willard decides to get to the destination on a patrol boat, following up the river. On the way, he studies Kurtz's dossier and thinks about the mission. Willard feels the motivation for eliminating Kurtz is not strong enough. After all, blaming someone for murder here in Vietnam is as pointless as blaming someone for speeding in a race. The boat arrives first at the landing zone, where the helicopter unit is based, commanded by the eccentric Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore. He is a big fan of surfing and loves to conquer the local waves, even when his soldiers are fighting off the Vietnamese. He must help the crew of the boat to pass through the zone of active hostilities. The crew needs to climb up the river to a certain point, but this place does not suit the lieutenant colonel because it is well fortified. Suddenly, unexpectedly, Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore recognizes Lance Johnson, a machine gunner on the boat who is well known as the best surfer on the California coast. For the opportunity to ride a wave with a celebrity, the lieutenant colonel immediately changes military plans, completely ignoring possible losses. He just wants to take over the village, destroy any resistance, and then have fun riding a 2-meter wave. He believes that the civilian casualties of the village do not matter because the Vietnamese do not surf. The next day, early in the morning, the air cavalry begins an attack on the beach and the village next to it, turning on the ride of the Valkyries from Richard Wagner's opera The Valkyrie on the loudspeakers. As according to Kilgore, this terrifies the Vietnamese. Lined up in a battle formation, attack helicopters with concentrated missile fire destroy the weakly armed defense of the Vietnamese. Airborne soldiers, supported by helicopters, capture the village. While evacuating an injured soldier, a teenage girl runs up to the helicopter and throws a grenade inside. The helicopter explodes, then she and her parents are shot from another helicopter. Meanwhile, a desperate resistance from local guerrillas remains on the coastline from the jungle, so Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore calls in planes that burn all the surrounding jungle with napalm. The lieutenant colonel is glad and says that he loves the smell of napalm in the morning, because this is the smell of victory. Due to napalm, the wind on the coast changes dramatically. As a result, the waves needed for surfing disappear. Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore says they must wait 20 minutes for the waves to reappear. But Willard does not have time for this, and he orders the boat to continue up the river, and in order to teach the lieutenant colonel a lesson, Willard takes his surfboard with him. Because of this, the next day the boat constantly goes along the coast and hides under the trees, because Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore is looking for them by helicopter and asks through the loudspeaker to return the surfboard to him. After all, in Vietnam another one is impossible to get. Lance assumes that the colonel is looking for them on all of his helicopters, broadcasting recorded colonel's voice on each one. Moving up the river, Willard learns the dossier on Kurtz received at the headquarters. Kurtz had a distinguished career, being groomed for a position as a general in the Pentagon. However, after several months of the Vietnam War, the 38-year-old Colonel Kurtz decides to take a course in Special Forces. Willard himself took such a course when he was 19 and, according to him, almost died there. As a result, from this moment, Willard is imbued with respect for Kurtz, considering the colonel an incredibly strong and high-willed man. On the boat, no one, including the commander, is aware of Willard's mission. Formally, he is considered a passenger who must be delivered to a given point. For all other issues, decisions are made by the commander of the boat. For example, the duties of a patrol boat include inspections of Vietnamese boats, looking for weapons for the guerrillas. While inspecting one of such boats, on which teenagers are transporting rice and vegetables, the military crew carefully examines each box. When one of the Vietnamese girls tries to prevent one of the boxes from being opened, a nervous machine gunner shoots her on the spot. Opening the box, the patrolmen find a small puppy inside. Arriving at the next American base, the crew sees a platform there in the form of a stage. The base command decided to cheer up the soldiers and invited the Playboy girls to perform a dance program. Feeling sexual tension and mental breakdowns caused by a senseless massacre, the soldiers run out onto the stage, either for autographs or to rape the dancers. Not having any wish to check it out, the organizer, along with the girls, barely manages to fly away in a helicopter, which did not even have time to refuel. Willard, having replenished his supplies of fuel, provisions and ammunition, orders to set sail. The next day, the team reaches the next base. The local commander stepped on a mine 2 months ago, and the soldiers have simply not done anything since. A Playboy helicopter is also found here, because without refueling it had to land here. Willard, on a sudden impulse, trades 2 casks of fuel for an opportunity for his accompanying soldiers to spend a few hours with the Playboy girls. The next day, continuing moving up the river, the crew loses more than half of the team after being fired upon from the jungle by guerrillas. Only 3 of them get to the next point on the boat: Willard, Lance and a guy named Chafe. Placing on the front line, Willard meets a detachment of crazy soldiers in a trench. Every morning, the detachment repairs the bridge over the river, and every night they unsuccessfully defend this bridge and their own lives from the Vietnamese attacks. They almost do not sleep and have long ceased to be aware of what is happening around. Captain Willard is trying to speak to any of them, but with no result, so he boards a boat and crosses under the bridge area while they are deliberately covered by a mad squad. So the boat ends up in neutral Cambodia, where Kurtz is hiding in the jungle. The next day, they arrive at the settlement, where they are greeted by a crazed photojournalist who talks about Kurtz's greatness, calling the colonel a warrior poet in the classical sense, which probably means the absence of any moral restraints. Willard leaves the Chafe on a boat with instructions to call the bombers to this square in case he does not return before 8 in the evening. Then he goes with Lance to the village, where he is captured by local residents and taken to Kurtz. A few hours later, Kurtz brings Willard the head of the Chafe who was left on the boat, because Colonel knows well the standard instructions during such operations. Kurtz frees Willard and tells him about his views on the methods of warfare. Kurtz doesn't understand why US Army shoots civilians and then take them to the hospital when they're injured. He considers this is hypocrisy and is sure that it is necessary to fight without pity and sentiment. Day after day, Kurtz involves Willard into his philosophy and convinces him to face the horror and even befriend it. Kurtz also says that after this war, there is no way for both of them to return to a normal life. Later, the journalist hints to Willard that Kurtz sees him as his successor, because Colonel is already very tired. Willard himself understands that Kurtz wishes to die like a warrior, and when Kurtz's men perform one of their rites, sacrificing a bull, Willard kills Kurtz with a machete. In Kurtz's room, Willard finds a printed report. Flipping through it, Willard discovers the inscription made by Kurtz's hand. Drop the bombs, kill them all. Kurtz's people bow to Willard and are ready to accept him as the new leader, but Willard sees from Kurtz's example that this path leads nowhere. He goes to the boat and swims back along the river, completely unaware of how to live on. Thank you for watching. By the way, Willard never found out why Kurtz disturbed so much his command. Let's try to guess it in the comments. Also press the hearts and subscribe.